Welcome everyone. My name is Abdulrahman Kormi and I'm a resident pharmacist at the University of Illinois Chicago. In this presentation, I will be discussing vaccine hesitancy, which is a growing challenge in public health. I will explore the most common reasons behind vaccine hesitancy and walk through communication strategies that can help address patient concerns effectively. By the end of this presentation, you will have a stronger understanding of the key factors driving vaccine hesitancy in various patient populations. You will be able to recognize common vaccine myths and explain the evidence behind them. You will also gain knowledge of communication strategies, particularly motivational interviewing, to help guide informed and respectful vaccine discussions. Let's start by defining vaccine hesitancy. Vaccine hesitancy refers to delay in acceptance or refusal of safe vaccines, despite availability of vaccination services. The issue is complex and context specific, varying across time, place, and vaccines. It is influenced by factors such as misinformation, complacency, convenience, and confidence. In fact, in 2019, the WHO identified vaccine hesitancy as one of the top 10 threats to global public health. Understanding this definition is key because it reminds us that vaccine hesitancy isn't just about one belief or one reason. It's shaped by many different factors that require tailored, thoughtful approaches when engaging with patients. Declining vaccination rates can threaten herd immunity. Herd immunity refers to the indirect protection from infectious diseases that occurs when a large portion of the population become immune, either through vaccination or previous infection, making it harder for the disease to spread. This helps protect people who cannot be vaccinated, like newborns or those with weakened immune systems. Now let's walk through the graphic. Starting with the group on the left, here only a few individuals are vaccinated, shown in blue. The orange figures represent infected individuals. As you can see, the virus spreads easily through the unprotected gay population, putting vulnerable individuals at high risk. The result is widespread infection. Now shift to the right side. Most of the group here is vaccinated, shown in blue. We just with just a few unvaccinated people in gray, even though there are a few infections in orange, the spread is limited. High vaccination coverage interrupts the chain of transmission, helping protect the unvaccinated. This is a clear example of how herd immunity works in real life, protecting both individual and the community. We just saw how herd immunity protects communities when vaccination rates are high and how easily that protection breaks down when coverage declines. This slide shows us what that breakdown looks like in real life. As of April 21st, 2025, there are 800 reported measles cases in the US, with outbreaks across several states. That's especially alarming because measles was declared eliminated in the US back in 2000. These outbreaks are not random, they are a direct result of declining vaccine coverage and a reminder of just how quickly we can lose the protection that herd immunity provides. Resistance to vaccination isn't new. It has been present since the very beginning, dating back to when the first vaccines were introduced. Throughout history, public confidence in vaccines has been challenged time and time again by misinformation, political controversy, and fear. Understanding this historical pattern helps us recognize that today's vaccine hesitancy is part of a long standing struggle and reminds us how important consistent education and trust building are in public health. This timeline shows us that vaccine hesitancy is not a new issue. It has deep historical roots tied to public mistrust, safety concerns, and misinformation. It begins in the late 1700s when Edward Jenner introduced the smallpox vaccine. Even then, there was resistance. People were skeptical of this new medical practice. In the 1800s, we saw the rise of organized opposition, especially after governments began passing mandatory vaccination laws. Moving into the 20th century, several events significantly shaped public fear. The Qatar incident in the 1950s led to infections and deaths from a faulty batch of polio vaccines. This understandably shocked public confidence. Later controversies over the DTP vaccine raised fears about neurological side effects, and the swine flu vaccine in the 1970s was linked to concerns about Guillain-Barré syndrome. In 1998, the now infamous Wakefield study falsely linked the MMR vaccine to autism. Although it was later retracted and debunked, that myth still fuels hesitancy today. In the 2000s, concerns around thimerosal, a mercury containing preservative, further fueled vaccine safety fears, despite no scientific evidence linking it to harm. Most recently, during the COVID 19 pandemic, we saw a surge in vaccine skepticism, driven by misinformation, political distrust, and fears about how quickly vaccines were developed. This timeline helps us understand that vaccine hesitancy is not just about one vaccine or one moment in time. It is a pattern of mistrust that builds over decades, and addressing it requires long term efforts in transparency, empathy, and education. While historical mistrust plays a significant role, vaccine hesitancy today is also driven by a range of individual and social factors, as shown here. The most commonly cited concern is safety. Some people don't feel confident about how vaccines are developed. Also, distrust in institutions such as health systems and pharmaceutical companies is another issue. We also see hesitancy fueled by misinformation and conspiracy theories. Some people have a genuine fear of needles or medical procedures, while others may feel complacent, believing they or their children are at low risk and don't need vaccines. Previous negative healthcare experiences can also affect trust and openness to vaccines. And social influence from family, friends can strongly shape someone's decisions, especially in close knit communities. Understanding these factors is key to responding in a way that is respectful, personalized, and rooted in empathy, not just facts. In the next section, we will take a closer look at some of the most widespread misconceptions and what the science actually tells us. In the late 1990s, a British doctor, Andrew Wakefield, falsely claimed that the MMR vaccine was linked to autism. Later, it was uncovered that he had hidden financial conflicts and serious ethical problems, and his study was full of major flaws. Because of this, he lost his medical license and his research was completely dismissed. In fact, there is no evidence that vaccines cause autism. Extensive research has been done to find any possible connection between vaccines and autism, but no link has ever been proven. In fact, several studies have shown that signs of autism often appear in children before they even receive the MMR vaccine. Some people think their child doesn't need vaccines because everyone else is already protected. But that's not how herd immunity works. Herd immunity helps protect vulnerable people, like newborns and those with weakened immune systems who cannot get vaccinated themselves. However, herd immunity only works when a high percentage of the community is vaccinated. If too many people skip vaccines, that protection breaks down and outbreaks can happen. When talking to patients, it is important to explain that vaccines protect both the individual and the entire community. Relying on others to be vaccinated puts everyone, especially the most vulnerable, at greater risk. We should encourage taking personal responsibility to help maintain strong, healthy communities. A common myth is that vaccines contain dangerous levels of toxins like mercury, formaldehyde, or aluminum. In reality, vaccines contain only trace amounts of these substances and at levels that have been thoroughly studied and shown to be safe. These ingredients serve important roles. They help boost the immune response, stabilize the vaccine, or prevent contamination. It is also important to note that the human body naturally produces more formaldehyde than is found in any vaccine, and the amount of aluminum present is comparable to what a baby would ingest through breast milk or formula in just a day or two. There is no scientific evidence linking the tiny amounts used in vaccines to harmful effects. All components are carefully regulated and meet FDA safety standards. One of the most common parental concerns is that giving multiple vaccines at once might overwhelm a child's immune system. But research has consistently shown that this fear is unfounded. In fact, a healthy child is exposed to many more antigens daily than they receive from vaccines. Modern vaccines are highly refined and use far fewer antigens than vaccines in the past. Giving several vaccines at once is not only safe, but also has practical advantages. It means fewer clinic visits and better adherence to the immunization schedule. Ultimately, a child's immune system is built to handle thousands of antigen at once, and the vaccine load is a tiny fraction of that. There is no scientific evidence that multiple vaccines at once weaken or overload the immune system. Before we dive in deeper, let's first take a moment to understand what motivational interviewing or MI actually is. MI is a patient centered communication approach that supports decision making without pressure or judgment. Rather than simply telling individuals what to do, MI helps them explore their own reasons for choosing vaccination. At its core, this method is based on respectful dialogue, no debate. Conversations are guided by empathy, curiosity, and a genuine effort to meet people where they are. MI allows healthcare professionals to tailor their discussions to each person's knowledge, values, and readiness to act. By creating a safe and open space, MI helps build trust and strengthen motivation toward positive health behaviors, including vaccine acceptance. But what happens when we rely only on facts without considering a person's beliefs, fears, or emotional concerns? While it might seem logical to respond to vaccine hesitancy with more data, that approach often falls short. In fact, research shows it can sometimes make resistance stronger. A review study found that providing only practical or logistical information without acknowledging parents' or patients' personal beliefs or emotions tends to be ineffective. This is because people don't base health decisions only on data. Emotions, experiences, and trust play a huge role. When we skip over those factors, we lose the opportunity to make meaningful progress. This finding reminds us that we need to engage thoughtfully, not just educate. That's where MI shows its true value, and the outcomes speak for themselves. MI is not just a theory, it is a well studied intervention with measurable benefits. Data shows that MI leads to higher vaccination rates and greater completion of vaccine schedules. Importantly, people who go through an MI based discussion report feeling more confident in their decisions and more satisfied with the interaction overall. This makes them more likely to follow through and more open to future health interventions. MI helps foster trust and provides patients with clarity and control, which is key when confronting vaccine myths or doubts. It is a method that builds lasting confidence, not just compliance. So, what makes MI effective? Let's take a look at the underlying principles that guide that approach. While there is no one size fits all approach to addressing vaccine hesitancy, MI provides a flexible person first model. Its foundation lies in four key principles. First, show real understanding. That means actively listening to and validating the person's experience without judgment. Second, help them see the gap between their current position and what they ultimately want for their health or their family's well being. Third, work with resistance. If someone hesitates, we don't pressure them. Instead, we explore what is holding them back. Finally, build confidence. Empower them to believe they can make informed decisions. These principles keep the conversation supportive, constructive, and patient led. Now, let's look at a practical framework that puts these principles into action, developed specifically for vaccine hesitancy. To make MI easier to apply in clinical practice, Ganyor's team developed a four-step framework. It starts with engage. The goal here is to build a genuine connection and create a safe space where the patient feels comfortable sharing their thoughts without fear of being judged or pressured. This foundation of trust sets the tone for the entire conversation. Then understand. This involves asking open ended questions and carefully listening to identify what truly matters to the person. The goal is to understand their perspective, not to fix it. Next is offer information. We use the ask, offer, ask approach to keep the conversation collaborative. First, we ask permission to share information by saying something like, would it be okay if I share what we know about the vaccine? Then we offer a brief, relevant fact focused on their specific concern. Finally, we ask again, checking how they feel about what was shared or if it helped. This avoids overwhelming them with facts and ensures the information is welcomed and meaningful. Finally, clarify and accept. In this last step, we wrap up the conversation in a respectful and supportive way. We summarize what was discussed, acknowledge their concerns, and most importantly, affirm their right to make their own decision. Even if they are not ready to act, we let them know we are here to support them whenever they are ready. The goal is not to pressure, it is to leave the door open for future conversations. MI approach helps create trust and connection, making it an effective strategy for long-term behavior change, especially in hesitant populations. In addition to the MI framework we just discussed, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also recommends a respectful, supportive approach when engaging with patients about vaccination. First, they emphasize the importance of showing empathy and collaborating. This means listening with genuine curiosity, not judgment, and creating a space for open conversation. Second, before offering any information, we should always ask for permission to talk about vaccines. Something as simple as, would it be okay if we talked about the COVID-19 vaccine? Gives the patients a sense of control and shows respect. Next, the CDC supports the use of MI strategies to guide a conversation rooted in the patient's values and readiness. Finally, they recommend responding carefully to questions, offering only accurate information within your scope, and referring to credible sources when needed. Ultimately, the goal is to maintain trust and help patients move at their own pace toward informed, confident health decisions. In this slide, I'm going to discuss a case study where a parent is a vaccine hesitant. A mother is hesitant about giving her 12-year-old daughter the human papillomavirus vaccine. She is worried that vaccinating might encourage early sexual activity and has heard rumors about serious side effects. When someone has multiple worries like this, is it more important to correct the facts immediately or to first listen and understand? Here is a critical moment. Our instinct might be to jump in and correct misconceptions, but instead we pause. We ask ourselves, what is more effective, correction or connection? In this case, understanding always comes first. The mother comes in with concerns not only about the vaccine safety, but also about the message it might send regarding sexual activity. At this stage, our priority is not to correct or educate, it is to listen. We begin by creating a safe space. In this case, the pharmacist says, thanks for coming in today. I would really like to hear your thoughts about the human papillomavirus vaccine. What are your main feelings or concerns about it? Why is it so critical to invite open conversation rather than jumping to giving advice? This question reminds us advice without permission often feels like pressure, but asking, what are your thoughts, opens the door to trust. The simple questions open invitation signals that her concerns matter. When a parent feels heard, not dismissed, they are more likely to stay engaged in the conversation. If we had jumped in with facts right away, she might have shut down or felt judged. However, patient feels safe to express her concerns right now. The mother shared her concerns and said, I want to protect my daughter, but I am worried that giving her this vaccine might send the wrong message. Also, I have heard online that it can cause health problems later. In this case, she shares her fears that vaccinating might send the wrong message or lead to long term harm. Instead of reacting or correcting, we reflect and affirm by saying something like, it sounds like you want to do what is best for her, but you have concerns about both the message and the safety. You have clearly thought a lot about it. This response by the pharmacist shows understanding and reinforces that she is a thoughtful parent, which she is. When we listen for values behind the fear, like wanting to protect her daughter, we get a much clearer path to productive dialogue. Listening for values behind the fears, like protecting her child, gives us a doorway to meaningful conversation, doesn't it? Exactly. When we reflect back those values, we affirm the parent's role. That's a powerful motivator. This moment highlights the why behind her fear, her deep desire to protect her daughter, and that's our entry point for empathy and trust. Once we have built that foundation of trust and understanding, we ask permission to share. In this case, the pharmacist says, would it be okay if I shared what we know about the human papillomavirus vaccine's safety? Imagine if we shared information without asking permission. How would that feel to someone already feeling unsure? That simple questions asking for permission signals respect. Imagine skipping that step with someone already unsure. It could feel pushy or dismissive. When she agrees, we keep it concise and targeted. For example, we say, research shows that human papillomavirus vaccine does not change sexual behavior, but does protect against cancer later in life. It has a strong safety record. What are your thoughts on that? This ask after ask approach prevents information overload and keeps the patient in control of the conversation. We are not just sharing facts, we are checking if the information resonates with her concerns. Finally, if she refuses, we respect her autonomy and leave the door open. In this case, the pharmacist says, of course, the decision is yours, and I am here to support you. Would you like some time to think about it? Or would you like to talk about getting started today? In conversations about vaccines, who should always have the final say, the healthcare provider or the patient? This is the heart of the motivational interviewing. We provide guidance, not pressure, because ultimately trust grows when the patient feels they are in control of their own decisions. By affirming her control and showing patience, we keep her engaged and respected. Even if she does not decide today, she is more likely to return and more open to future discussions. Vaccine hesitancy is not new. People have questioned vaccines since they were first developed, often because of fear, misinformation, or lack of trust. Over time, common myths have spread, like the idea that vaccines cause autism, harm fertility, or contain dangerous ingredients. But the evidence is clear. Vaccines are safe, effective, and carefully monitored. Research has repeatedly shown that these myths are not true. To move the conversation forward, we can use motivational interviewing. This approach creates a safe space for people to share their concerns. It helps us listen without judgment and guide patients toward making informed, confident choices. In the end, addressing vaccine hesitancy is not about convincing people with facts alone. It is about building trust, respecting their concerns, and meeting them where they are. Here are my references.